There are moments in life where the unimaginable happens, moments that leave even the most seasoned law enforcement professionals struggling to make sense of what they've just witnessed. Imagine, for a second, stepping into a scene so shocking, so utterly beyond reason, that it breaks every rule of logic, leaving you questioning your very understanding of reality. That's exactly what happened one fateful evening when a group of detectives and officers walked into a house that would leave an indelible mark on their minds forever. The scene was so bizarre, so disturbingly unreal, that even the most hardened veterans of the force were left speechless, struggling to piece together the fragments of a puzzle that simply shouldn't exist. What they found inside that house would go on to become one of the most chilling, confusing, and perplexing crime scenes in modern history. But here's the thing, this isn't just any ordinary crime story. No, this is one that will make you question everything you thought you knew about crime, reality, and even human nature. I want you to think about what you know about the darker sides of life, the unsettling stories of things that can happen when people slip through the cracks of society. You've heard of grisly murders, sinister conspiracies, and strange occurrences that defy all odds. But what if I told you this case doesn't fit into any of those categories? What if it transcends all your expectations and leaves you with more questions than answers? This isn't a story where the answers come easy. It's one that will make you keep thinking long after the video ends, and one that you'll find impossible to forget. I know why you clicked on this video. You're looking for that feeling of intrigue, the kind of story that grips your mind and refuses to let go. Something dark, something mysterious, something that will take you on a journey you won't be able to stop thinking about. Well, buckle up, because what you're about to hear is unlike anything you've encountered before. You're not just watching a true crime story, you're diving deep into the unknown, into a case that defies comprehension. And trust me, by the time we reach the end of this video, you'll have the answers you're looking for. Let me set the stage for you. It was a normal evening, just like any other. The phone rings, and like many officers before them, a team of detectives answers the call, expecting the usual. But when they arrived on the scene, they quickly realized that this case was anything but usual. They walked into a house on a quiet street, and what they found inside turned their world upside down. It wasn't just the grotesque details of the crime itself. It was the inexplicable nature of the entire situation. The evidence didn't add up. Nothing seemed to follow the pattern that detectives were so used to. Was it a cruel prank? A bad joke? Or something far darker, something more insidious? Picture this. A family home, seemingly peaceful and normal on the outside, was hiding something far worse within. The officers and detectives who stepped across the threshold were immediately hit with a sense of unease, as though the very air in the house carried the weight of an unspeakable horror. What greeted them was beyond their wildest nightmares: blood, chaos, and an unsettling silence that seemed to echo through the halls. There was no sign of struggle, no clear explanation of what had transpired, and yet it was clear that something devastating had occurred. As the investigators moved through the house, the pieces just didn't fit. Evidence was found in the most unexpected places, things that didn't make sense. And the deeper they dug, the more questions piled up. Who could have done this?
Why?
And how could something so wrong happen in a place that seemed so ordinary? What made this case even more baffling was the absence of any witnesses, no suspects, and no clear motive. It was as if the crime itself was a riddle, designed to torment those trying to solve it. Now, you might be asking yourself, what exactly happened? What did the police find that was so disturbing? That's the burning question that no one could answer, not right away anyway. But I'm not going to leave you hanging for long. Throughout this video, we'll piece together the clues step by step, examining the strange and twisted details that don't add up, revealing the shocking discoveries that no one could have predicted. I want you to imagine being one of the detectives walking into that house, seeing something so incomprehensible that you question whether you're in the right place. You've been trained to handle anything, but nothing prepares you for the kind of mystery that unfolds here. The truth is, no one was ready for this case. No one could have predicted how it would unfold. The horror of the crime scene was just the beginning. What followed was a journey through the darkest corners of the human psyche as detectives uncovered secrets that would lead them down a rabbit hole of deception, fear, and unimaginable terror. And here's the thing, you're not going to want to look away. This story is one that will keep you on the edge of your seat, as each new twist and turn leads to an even darker revelation. Just when you think you have the answers, something new will be revealed that will make you question everything you thought you knew about this case. Trust me when I say this, by the end of this video, you'll be asking yourself how something so terrifying could happen in the world we live in. But here's the kicker. Even as the investigation unfolds, the true nature of the crime begins to reveal itself in the most unexpected ways. The detectives, who initially thought they were dealing with a simple case, soon realized that this crime scene is much more than just an isolated tragedy. It's part of something far more complex, something far more terrifying. What happened in that house is only the tip of the iceberg, and as we peel back the layers, you'll uncover a truth so chilling that it will stay with you long after the video ends. I know you're curious. I know you're itching to understand what happened inside that house. So stick with me through every twist and turn. Keep watching because the answers will come. But the journey there is one that will challenge everything you thought you knew about crime, about justice, and about what happens when the line between reality and nightmare begins to blur. Trust me, this is a story you won't want to miss. Stay tuned, because the truth behind this crime scene is more mind-boggling than you could ever imagine. And when it all comes together, you'll be left with one question that I guarantee will haunt you. How could something like this even happen? But first, let's start with the mystery itself. What exactly did the police witness on that fateful night? What secrets were hidden in plain sight? And more importantly, who was behind it all? Keep watching, because everything you think you know is about to be turned upside down. The house itself, tucked away on a quiet, unassuming street, had always been a place of calm for those who knew the family living there. From the outside, it looked like any typical suburban home. Neatly trimmed lawn, white picket fence, and a porch with rocking chairs, where the soft hum of crickets in the evening air brought a sense of peaceful normalcy. But that illusion of serenity would shatter the moment the officers and detectives stepped over the threshold. What they didn't know was that behind the closed doors, something far more sinister had been brewing for weeks, perhaps months, leading up to the moment they arrived. The family living inside that house wasn't particularly remarkable. They were a tight-knit group, 2 parents, a teenage daughter, and a younger son. On the surface, they were the kind of family that might have been the subject of envy in their quiet neighborhood. But, as is often the case with stories like these, there was more to them than met the eye. Each member carried secrets, some more dangerous than others, and those secrets would eventually collide with disastrous consequences. The father, William, was a man of few words. He had always been the provider, the steady hand who kept everything in place. He worked long hours as an architect, and while he wasn't absent from his family's life, there was an emotional distance that had been growing for years. William had always been a man of routine, and his life was built around structure. Yet recently, something had begun to shift. Friends noticed at first. He'd started showing signs of stress, snapping at people more than usual, and becoming withdrawn. His obsession with his work had deepened, and he would sometimes disappear into his study for hours, even days, without a word. But what caught the attention of those closest to him was his increasing isolation from his wife, Claire. Claire, the mother, had always been the opposite of William in many ways. Where he was rigid and focused on the practical aspects of life, Claire was warm, nurturing, the type of woman who could light up a room with her laughter. But as the weeks passed, her demeanor began to change. Her usual cheerful attitude was replaced by a hollow, distracted look. She seemed to be constantly looking over her shoulder, as though she was expecting someone or something to appear at any moment. Her interactions with the neighbors grew more erratic, sometimes friendly, sometimes strangely cold. What was once a warm and inviting home became one of palpable tension. People began to notice her odd behavior, but no one knew why. Was she simply under stress? Or was there something more sinister lurking beneath the surface? Then there was their teenage daughter, Emily. She was quiet, introverted, a typical teenager in many ways. Yet there was a darkness that began to cloud her usually bright presence. She'd been distant from her friends, retreating more into her room, isolating herself from family activities. There were whispers that she had been struggling with school, and though she rarely spoke about it, rumors of a secret boyfriend began to swirl. Emily had also been frequenting the local library, often checking out books that were far darker than anything one might expect from a girl her age. Some of the books had even been on topics that no one really wanted to talk about: dark psychology, the human mind, crime. And most troubling of all, there was the peculiar notebook she'd been carrying around, one that no one had ever been able to get a good look at. The notes inside were cryptic, fragmented, but disturbing enough that it made one wonder whether Emily was holding the key to something no one had anticipated. The youngest member of the family, little Noah, had been the one to notice something strange in the house before anyone else did. He wasn't old enough to fully understand the dynamics at play, but he often spoke of things that unsettled his parents. He'd say he saw shadows in the corner of the house, or heard whispers when no one else was talking. These odd statements were usually brushed off by his parents as the wild imagination of a young child, but looking back, some wondered if Noah was somehow picking up on something far more sinister. He had become quieter, withdrawn in his own way, though no one could pinpoint exactly why. What no one realized at the time, what no one could have known, was that these growing tensions and strange occurrences were merely the tip of the iceberg. The truth was, there had been forces at play in that house for far longer than anyone realized. The events leading up to that fateful night had been set in motion by a series of seemingly innocuous decisions, small actions, and missteps. The first crack in the foundation was when William made a troubling financial decision that put the entire family in jeopardy. He had taken out a second mortgage on the house to finance a high-risk business venture, something he'd kept hidden from Claire. It was supposed to be temporary, just a short-term gamble. But as with most risks, things spiraled out of control. The business failed, and the financial strain on the family grew, feeding the already simmering tension. At the same time, Claire began to form an unusual friendship with a neighbor, someone who had recently moved into the area. His name was Michael, and although he was charming and outwardly friendly, there was an unsettling air about him. He seemed to know just what to say to put Claire at ease, offering advice and comfort that no one else had been able to provide. But there was something off about Michael, something that didn't sit right with people who took the time to really notice. He had a way of lingering too long in conversations, of asking questions that dug too deep into matters best left undisturbed. He had an uncanny ability to be in the right place at the right time, a fact that made more than one person uncomfortable. What no one knew at the time was that Michael had been involved in a number of questionable dealings in his past, ties to people who operated in the shadows, far removed from the quiet, suburban life he was now living. But perhaps the most perplexing part of the story lies with Emily, who had been spending more and more time alone with Michael. Their interactions were odd, always brief, and yet there was a subtle connection that neither William nor Claire could explain. It wasn't until much later that anyone began to realize the full extent of Emily's connection to Michael, or the chilling role she might have played in what happened that night. With each passing day, the walls around the family closed in tighter. Everyone was on edge, but no one spoke about it. The tension grew unbearable, and then, in the blink of an eye, the unimaginable happened. The crime scene that would leave everyone in shock had been set into motion by a series of miscalculations, misplaced trust, and hidden truths. By the time the officers arrived, it was already too late. But what they found in that house, what they witnessed that night, would leave them questioning everything. And now, it's your turn to try to piece it all together. Who is truly responsible for the horrors that unfolded within that house? Was it the father, driven to desperation by his mounting debts? The mother, unraveling under the pressure of her hidden fears? Or was it something darker, more insidious, a secret that no one had suspected, a conspiracy so well-crafted that no one saw it coming? The clues are all there, but they don't quite add up. Keep watching, because soon you'll be uncovering the truth behind this chilling mystery, and when you do, you'll realize just how close to home this story really is. The answers are just around the corner. And trust me, what's coming next will change everything you think you know. As the investigation unfolded, the pieces of the puzzle seemed to be falling into place, but with each step forward, the truth appeared to slip further from reach. What began as a clear-cut case of a family in crisis quickly became tangled in webs of secrecy and deception that no one, not even the most experienced detectives, had anticipated. It became increasingly clear that someone, or something, was deliberately trying to obscure the facts, to make sure the truth stayed buried deep beneath layers of lies and half-truths. The first blow came when a crucial piece of evidence disappeared without a trace. The police had been investigating a series of strange phone calls that had been made from the family's home late at night in the weeks leading up to the crime. The calls were disturbing, filled with cryptic messages and what appeared to be veiled threats. The police had traced the calls to a burner phone, one that had been registered under a false name. But when they went to seize the phone as evidence, it was gone. The family's landline records, which could have revealed more, had been wiped clean, erased completely from the system. No one could explain how or why. The tech experts who were brought in to investigate the data recovery were baffled. The call logs should have still existed in some form, but they had vanished, as if they'd never existed at all. It was a calculated move, designed to hinder the investigation. But by whom?
And why?
As the pressure mounted, one of the detectives, Alex Donovan, began to receive anonymous warnings to stop digging into the case. At first, it seemed like just a fluke, someone trying to throw them off track. But then the warnings grew more intense, more personal. Alex's car was keyed one night in the parking lot, a message left scrawled across the windshield in red paint. Stop or else. The threats weren't subtle anymore. Whoever was behind them clearly knew things about Alex's life, things that made it clear they were watching every move. It became a chilling reminder that this investigation was no longer just a job. It had become a personal game, one in which the stakes were far higher than anyone had anticipated. It wasn't long before Alex began to suspect that someone within the police department itself might be involved in the cover-up. The deeper he dug, the more he realized that there were gaps in the records, people whose alibis didn't quite hold up, and strange inconsistencies in the statements of the family members. No one was exactly lying, but the pieces didn't fit together. His gut told him something was wrong, but who could he trust? The last thing he wanted was to accuse someone inside his own department, but as the pressure mounted, Alex realized that the only way to uncover the truth was to keep pushing, no matter what it cost him. Then there was Claire. She had been distant ever since the first round of police questioning, but Alex couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. The grief she showed over the loss of her family seemed genuine, but there were moments when her composure cracked. It wasn't just the strange interactions with her new neighbor, Michael, though those, in hindsight, seemed more and more suspicious. Claire had also begun acting strangely around certain people, especially when it came to Emily. Every time Alex tried to get a straight answer from her about the relationships in the family, Claire seemed to deflect, her answers vague and evasive. But something else troubled Alex more deeply. There was a connection between Claire's past and the events leading up to that night. A past that, until now, had been hidden from everyone, including her own family. Alex's breakthrough came when he managed to track down one of Claire's old friends from her college days. This friend, a woman named Sarah, had been someone Claire had lost contact with years ago, but after a few subtle questions, Alex found out that Claire and Sarah had shared a dark secret, one that Claire had buried deep within her memory. It was a secret that involved a betrayal, a moment of weakness that had set off a chain of events that might very well be connected to the tragedy in that house. According to Sarah, Claire had once been involved in a dangerous relationship with a man from her past, someone who had ties to criminal activity. The relationship ended badly, with Claire going into hiding for a time. But Sarah was adamant that Claire had never fully recovered from that period in her life, and that some of the decisions she made in the present were rooted in the trauma of that past. But just as Alex was piecing this together, a new layer of uncertainty was thrown into the mix. Michael, the mysterious neighbor who had been such a comfort to Claire, wasn't who he appeared to be. Alex managed to dig into Michael's background and discovered a shocking truth. He had been involved in a string of financial scams, and there were ties linking him to some very dangerous people. But as Alex tried to dig deeper, Michael suddenly vanished. No one knew where he had gone, and his apartment was completely empty, as though he had never been there at all. His name didn't exist in any records. He had erased all traces of himself. The more Alex uncovered, the more it became clear that Michael was at the center of a far-reaching conspiracy. But what was his real connection to Claire, and how had he so seamlessly wormed his way into the family's lives? Then, just when Alex thought he was getting closer to the truth, he received an anonymous tip-off that threw everything into chaos. The tipster claimed to know what happened the night of the crime, but they wouldn't reveal their identity. Instead, they sent Alex a cryptic message. The answers you seek are in the house, but they're hidden where you'll never find them. Was it a bluff? A lie meant to send him down the wrong path? Or was it a genuine clue? The key to finally unlocking the mystery? The more Alex thought about it, the more his instincts screamed that something wasn't right. The walls were closing in, and the more he uncovered, the more dangerous it became. Who could he trust? What if he was being played, just like everyone else? Was it possible that the people he had been relying on were all part of the cover-up, leading him in circles? And if the truth really was hidden within that house, then what exactly had he missed? As Alex stood outside the house late one night, staring up at the dark windows, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching him. The house, once a symbol of safety and normalcy, had become a place of fear, a place where no one was what they seemed. What happened there wasn't just a crime. It was the beginning of something much darker, something that Alex was only starting to understand. But with each new twist, it seemed like the truth was slipping further away. And now, with everything on the line, Alex had to decide, would he risk everything to uncover the final, terrifying truth? Or would the darkness consume him just as it had consumed the family? As Alex stood there, lost in his thoughts, the weight of the case pressing heavily on him, he suddenly received an unexpected call. It was from his partner, Detective Sam Walters, someone he had worked with for years and trusted implicitly. Sam's voice was strained, and Alex could tell something was off. Alex. Before Alex could process the new information, Sam leaned in, his face a mixture of fear and urgency. "There's more," he whispered. "I've been getting the same kind of warnings you have. Someone's been trying to scare me off this case, too. A few days ago, I found a message waiting for me in my locker, an anonymous note. It was a simple sentence. If you want to know the truth, you won't make it out alive." The handwriting was familiar. It was almost identical to the one in the warning you got. Whoever's behind this, they're closer than we think. Alex felt a chill run down his spine. It was one thing to be warned, but it was another entirely to know that whoever was behind it had infiltrated the department. And now, it seemed, they were turning their attention towards Sam. The more he thought about it, the more it became clear, this wasn't just an isolated incident. There was a web of corruption surrounding them, a conspiracy that stretched further than anyone could have imagined. The more they dug, the more dangerous it became. The idea that someone within the police force was working against them, actively sabotaging their efforts to uncover the truth, was a terrifying realization. And if that wasn't enough, the mystery of Claire and Michael grew even murkier. It wasn't long before Alex began to notice something strange about the family's interactions with one another. Emily, the youngest of the children, seemed to be hiding something, a look of recognition every time Claire's name came up in conversation, as though she knew something her mother was desperate to keep hidden. Alex had spoken to Emily before, but the girl had been quiet, unwilling to open up fully. But now, in the wake of everything, Alex started to suspect that Emily might know more than she was letting on. She had mentioned something odd to one of the officers while they were at the station, a game that she and her mother had played when they were alone in the house. It was a game of pretend, she said, where Claire would make her act out different scenarios. But when asked for more details, Emily had clammed up, refusing to elaborate. Was it a harmless childhood game, or was there something far more sinister beneath the surface? Alex had no choice but to dig deeper into Emily's past. Something was off, and every instinct told him there was more to the story. He slid an envelope across the table, its contents hidden from view. When Alex opened it, his eyes immediately widened in disbelief. Inside was a photo, grainy, taken from a security camera at the gas station just a few miles away from the family's home. It was a picture of Claire, looking almost unrecognizable. But it wasn't the image that made Alex's heart race. It was the person standing next to her. Michael. The same Michael who had disappeared without a trace. The same Michael who had so conveniently shown up in Claire's life. The photo was time-stamped only hours before the crime had occurred. Alex's mind raced. How could this be? Had Michael been involved with Claire long before the night of the tragedy? Was he somehow manipulating her, pulling her deeper into something darker? But more importantly, why hadn't anyone seen this photograph before? Why hadn't it been discovered in the initial sweep of the area? Alex knew the answer. Someone had hidden it. Someone wanted this photo kept under wraps.
You need to meet me.
It's urgent. I've got something you're not going to believe, and I think it's tied to the case, Sam said, his voice low, almost a whisper. The usual tone of confidence that Alex had come to rely on was absent, replaced by something much darker. A pit formed in his stomach as he promised to meet him immediately. What could Sam have uncovered? Was it more about the house? Or was it something far worse, something even more twisted? The two met in a secluded diner on the outskirts of town, far from the watchful eyes of the department and anyone else who might be tracking their movements. Sam wasted no time. The investigation took yet another turn when a previously ignored lead resurfaced. A neighbor who lived across the street from the family had come forward with new information. She claimed that, on the night of the crime, she had seen a figure moving around the house late into the evening, long after the police had arrived. It was a person, but their features were obscured by a large coat, and they were carrying what appeared to be a heavy bag. The neighbor said she had been too scared to approach, but she had watched the person slip into the backyard, disappearing into the shadows. The neighbor had assumed it was one of the officers working the scene, but now that she was piecing it together, she realized it wasn't. The coat was too large, the movements too erratic. Alex's heart raced. Who was this mysterious figure? And why had they been in the yard long after the crime had taken place? The more Alex uncovered, the more the investigation seemed to spiral out of control. There were too many conflicting stories, too many unanswered questions. Claire's behavior grew increasingly erratic, her alibis shaky, and the people she had been in contact with grew even more suspicious. And just as Alex thought he was about to unravel the truth, a final, cryptic message arrived. It wasn't a note or a phone call. This time, it came in the form of a video sent to his phone. The video was short, no more than a few seconds long. But in it, Alex could see something that made his blood run cold. It was a recording from inside the house, a video of Claire, looking directly into the camera, whispering, "They'll never believe you." The screen went black, and that was it. No explanation. No clue as to who had sent it. No answers, just more questions. As Alex watched the video over and over, trying to make sense of it, he couldn't shake the feeling that the walls were closing in. Whoever was behind this had planned it carefully, and they were always one step ahead. The more he uncovered, the more the truth seemed to slip further out of his grasp. It was as if the answers were just beyond his reach, taunting him, forcing him to dig deeper, to risk everything. And with each new twist, the stakes got higher. With everyone around him seeming to have something to hide, Alex was left questioning his every move, unsure who to trust and who to suspect. The truth, he realized, might be far darker than he could ever imagine. But would he ever be able to uncover it before it was too late? Or would the mystery consume him just like it had consumed the family at the heart of this tragic story? As the tension built to a breaking point, Alex knew one thing for certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. The tension in Alex's life had been steadily building, but it wasn't until that night, when everything shifted, that he truly understood the danger he was in. It had been a long day of interviews and dead ends, each piece of the puzzle he was so desperately trying to solve slipping further from his grasp. But the moment that changed everything came just after sunset, when Alex received an unexpected call. It was from Sam Walters. "Alex, I don't know how to say this, but you need to get here, now." Sam's voice was tight, urgent, and filled with panic. There was a long pause before Sam continued. "It's about Claire, she's gone." Alex's heart dropped into his stomach. "Gone? What do you mean gone?" "She disappeared." The words felt foreign, wrong, But Sam's voice only confirmed his worst fears. "She's not just gone," Sam said, the words slow and deliberate, as if every syllable weighed a ton. "I was just at the house. I checked the place. There was no sign of forced entry, nothing. Just a lot of broken things. But the worst part? The children are missing too. There's no trace of them. I don't know where she's gone, but Alex, I think whoever's behind all of this has taken them." The air in the room grew thick, suffocating. Alex stood motionless for a moment, his mind racing. His gut twisted in a way it never had before. Something had changed, something dangerous. Whoever was behind the twisted web of lies, threats, and murder had escalated things far beyond the point of no return. Alex knew, deep down, that if Claire had disappeared, and now the children too, there was no turning back. He wasn't just investigating a case anymore. He was caught in it. And it was starting to feel like the walls were closing in on him. His immediate instinct was to grab his keys and race to the house. But before he could move, a soft knock on his front door froze him in place. The kind of knock that didn't belong in the middle of the night, in the quiet of a seemingly normal evening. Alex's heart began to pound in his chest as he slowly moved toward the door. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end, a chilling sense of unease creeping over him. He didn't expect anyone, and certainly not this late. Whoever was on the other side knew something. They had to. Taking a deep breath, he opened the door, but there was no one there. Nothing but the cold wind that swept into the house, rattling the leaves on the trees outside. Alex glanced around, but the street was eerily quiet. It was then that he saw it. On the doorstep, a small, crumpled piece of paper. He bent down and unfolded it with trembling hands. It was a single sentence, written in a hurried, scrawled hand. "You're next." A chill crawled up Alex's spine. It wasn't just a threat. It was a warning, a confirmation that whoever was orchestrating this nightmare had their sights set on him now. His fingers went numb as he read the words over and over, unable to make sense of them, but feeling the weight of their meaning deep in his bones. He looked around once more, his eyes darting to the shadows beyond his porch, but saw nothing. The fear crept up his throat, thick and suffocating, as he realized the gravity of the situation. Whoever was behind this, whoever had been pulling the strings, wasn't going to stop. Not until they had their way. He slammed the door shut, locking it, then leaned against it, trying to steady his breathing. The urgency in Sam's voice echoed in his mind, but it was the note in his hands that kept him frozen in place. Who had left it? Was it a warning or a promise? Could it be one of his own colleagues? Was someone within the force trying to silence him? The paranoia was overwhelming. Was anyone he had trusted truly on his side, or was it all just part of the deception? The doubt gnawed at him, eating away at his thoughts. The investigation had become something much darker than he could have anticipated, but now it was personal. Now it was about survival. As the minutes stretched on, Alex couldn't shake the sense that someone was watching him. He turned every corner with the feeling that eyes were on him, just out of sight. It wasn't just the note. It was the lingering, oppressive sense of being hunted, as if the game had shifted and he was no longer the hunter, but the prey. His phone buzzed in his pocket, snapping him out of his thoughts. It was another message, but this time, it wasn't from Sam or any of the other officers. It was an unknown number. He hesitated but answered. The voice on the other end was cold, distorted, barely a whisper. "Stop digging, Alex. You've crossed a line you can't uncross. It's not too late to let this go. If you want to make it out of this alive, forget everything you think you know. This is your last warning." The line went dead. Alex's hands trembled as he held the phone, the silence that followed filling the space around him like a heavy fog. He felt a pit in his stomach, the kind of dread that told him this wasn't just a threat, it was a promise. They were watching him. The people behind the case were close, closer than he realized. And now they were making it personal. Everything Alex thought he knew about the case had just been turned upside down. As he looked out the window into the night, a sickening realization hit him. He wasn't safe anymore. His every move would be monitored. Everyone around him, including Sam, was a potential target. Whoever was behind the web of terror, whoever had so carefully constructed this nightmare, wanted him to suffer. They wanted him to feel their power. With his heart racing, Alex grabbed his jacket and stormed out of the house, the urgency propelling him forward. The fear was there, sure, but so was the anger. He wasn't going to back down, not now, not when he was so close. He couldn't. He had no choice but to push forward, to keep searching, to find the answers that everyone else had overlooked. But deep down, he knew the truth. Every step he took, every new lead he chased, brought him closer to something far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. As he made his way to Sam's, the streets felt quieter than ever, the silence around him oppressive, almost suffocating. And that's when he saw it, a shadow moving in the alley ahead of him, a figure standing still, just out of reach of the streetlight. His breath caught in his throat as his eyes locked on the silhouette, the fear tightening in his chest. Who was it? And more importantly, were they watching him? Or was it someone else? He moved toward the shadow cautiously, every instinct telling him to be ready for whatever came next. What Alex didn't know, though, was that this was only the beginning. Whatever was coming for him, whatever lay hidden in the darkness of this mystery, was closing in. And soon, he would have no place to hide. Just as Alex approached the shadowy figure in the alley, his pulse quickened, and every instinct screamed at him to be cautious. He could barely make out the shape standing motionless under the dim light, and the closer he got, the more a sense of dread crawled up his spine. He tried to steady his breath, but it was becoming impossible. This was different from the quiet threat he'd received earlier. This felt too real. His mind raced with possibilities. Was this the person behind the twisted web of lies? Was this the one orchestrating it all? But as Alex reached out to confront the figure, something in his gut told him to stop. He wasn't ready for what was coming. The figure stepped out from the shadows, and the streetlight revealed a familiar face. Alex froze, his eyes widened, his breath catching in his throat as his mind struggled to process what he was seeing. It was Detective Sam Walters. But something was wrong. Sam's usual confident demeanor was gone, replaced by an unsettling tension in his eyes, a darkness that Alex hadn't noticed before. And the most chilling part? Sam wasn't alone. There was someone standing behind him, someone Alex hadn't expected to see, not in a million years.
Claire.
Alex, we need to talk, Sam said, his voice low and strained. But it wasn't just the words that unnerved Alex. It was the look on Claire's face. Something was off. There was no relief in her eyes, no sign of being found. She didn't look like the woman Alex had spent years with. Instead, there was a coldness, an emptiness that sent a ripple of unease through his body. Before Alex could speak, Sam took a step forward, raising a hand to stop him. Listen to me, Alex. I know this is hard to understand, but you've been chasing the wrong leads. Everything you've believed so far? It's all wrong. You've been used. The words hit Alex like a punch to the stomach. He stumbled back, trying to process the weight of them. What are you talking about? Sam, what the hell is going on? It's not what you think. None of it is. Sam's eyes flickered to Claire, who remained eerily still, her gaze vacant. You've been investigating a story that goes much deeper than you know. All the clues, every trail you followed, were meant to lead you here. To us. Alex felt the ground beneath him shift. His thoughts scattered like leaves in a storm.
What was Sam saying?
Was Claire involved in all this too? Had he been played by someone he trusted? The images of Claire, the woman he thought he knew, were now shattering before his eyes, and it felt like the world had turned upside down. Sam, you're not making any sense. What are you trying to tell me? Alex's voice was barely a whisper, the reality of the situation sinking in too fast. Claire, Sam said, his tone turning softer. She wasn't the victim. She's been the mastermind all along. And you, Alex, were never supposed to find out. The words crashed over Alex like a tidal wave, drowning him in disbelief. He turned to Claire, looking for some explanation, some sign that this was all a mistake. But there was nothing in her expression. No apology. No shock. Just a cold, calculating stare. His mind reeled. It was impossible. Claire, the woman he loved, the mother of his children, she was behind it all? You're lying, Alex finally managed to say, his voice barely audible.
There's no way.
You're both part of this? Sam, you've been helping her. No, Sam replied, shaking his head slowly. I was never part of it. Not at first. But when I found out, when I saw what Claire was really up to, I tried to stop it. But it was too late. She was already too far gone. He paused, looking directly at Alex. The truth is, Alex, everything that's been happening, the disappearances, the deaths, the threats, it's all been carefully orchestrated. And you've been a pawn in her game the entire time. The shock of his words hit Alex like a punch to the gut, but it was the next thing Sam said that shattered everything he thought he knew. Your children aren't missing, Alex. They've been hidden. And Claire's not the only one behind this. There's someone else, someone you don't even know, pulling the strings. And it's someone you've trusted from the very beginning. Alex's mind raced, the pieces of the puzzle scattering in all directions.
No.
This can't be happening. Sam, who else is involved? What the hell is going on? Sam took a long breath, his face hardening. There's a bigger plan at work here. It's not just about you or Claire or the kids. This has been in motion for years. There's a hidden agenda that's been playing out right under your nose, Alex. And I don't know if we can stop it now. Alex's legs felt weak beneath him, and for a moment, he thought he might collapse right there on the pavement. The walls seemed to close in on him, the air thick with confusion and fear. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't think. Everything was spinning out of control. And now, the worst part was clear. No one was safe. Not him. Not his family. He had been living a lie, and now the truth was more horrifying than anything he could have imagined. And just when he thought things couldn't get worse, Claire took a slow step forward, her voice soft, almost pitying. Alex, I never wanted you to find out like this. But there's no turning back now. The pieces are in place. And you're the final one. You've always been the final piece. As the words hung in the air, a cold, empty silence settled over them. Alex's world had just shattered, and in its place was a nightmare that made everything he thought he understood about the case seem like a carefully crafted illusion. His heart pounded in his chest as he took a step back, trying to process the enormity of what Sam and Claire had just revealed. But before he could ask another question, Sam's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out and glanced at the screen, his face turning pale. His eyes locked on Alex's for a brief moment before he said, "It started. We have to move.
Now."
Everything in Alex's body screamed for him to run, to escape, but he knew it was too late. Whatever was happening now, whatever this twisted game was that Claire and Sam had drawn him into, there was no getting out. The truth was slipping through his fingers faster than he could grasp it, and what lay ahead was darker, more dangerous than anything he had ever faced. And then, as they turned to leave, Alex heard a faint whisper behind him, a voice that he thought he would never hear again. "You should have never come this far, Alex."
It was a voice from his past.
And just like that, everything Alex thought he knew about this case, about his life, was called into question once again. As the night grew darker, the weight of the truth pressed down on Alex with a suffocating force. Each step he took away from Sam and Claire felt like a slow march towards something he couldn't escape, no matter how fast he ran. His mind raced, unable to process the whirlwind of revelations, but deep down, he knew there was no turning back now. Every instinct screamed at him to flee, to distance himself from the mess they had created. But something kept him grounded. A sense of duty, a need to protect what was left of his family, even as the walls around him continued to close in. The moment he stepped inside his house, the tension escalated even further. It was supposed to be his safe haven, a place where he could find solace after a day spent chasing dead-end leads. But now it felt like a trap. He couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching him. The silence was deafening, and every creak of the floorboards seemed like a warning, as if the house itself was telling him that he was no longer in control. Then, there she was.
Claire.
Her presence was almost too much to bear, but the moment her eyes locked with his, Alex knew he had to confront her. He had no choice. The truth was too dangerous to ignore, and too much was at stake for him to back down now. His heart pounded as he took a few steps forward, closing the distance between them. "Alex," Claire whispered, her voice barely audible, but it held a note of desperation, as if she knew what was coming. "Please let me explain." He couldn't let her manipulate him any longer. "Explain? Explain what, Claire? What the hell is going on? You've been lying to me this entire time, haven't you? You knew all along, didn't you?" His voice cracked, the anger and hurt bubbling to the surface. "You were never in danger. This whole thing was a setup."
But why?
"Why drag me into it?" Claire's face fell, her eyes welling up with tears, but it wasn't the kind of emotional breakdown Alex had hoped for. Instead, it was as if she was trying to sell him a story, to make him believe she was still the same woman he had loved. She stepped closer, her hands trembling as she reached out to him, but Alex recoiled. He couldn't let himself fall for her act again. "Alex, I never wanted it to go this far. You have to understand, it wasn't supposed to be like this," she said, her voice low and shaky, but there was a coldness behind it that Alex couldn't ignore. I was trying to protect you, to protect all of us, but now I don't know if I can stop it. If I can stop them." Her words sent a chill down his spine. The truth was slipping through his fingers, and as much as he wanted to believe her, everything she said only made him more suspicious. "Stop it? Stop who, Claire? Who's pulling the strings here?" Before she could answer, the sound of a car door slamming outside cut through the tension like a knife. Alex's heart skipped a beat as he turned toward the window, his gaze darting between the shadows. He knew who it was. He had no choice but to go out and face it. Face the person who had brought him here in the first place, the one person he thought he could trust above all others.
Sam.
As Alex stepped outside, the weight of the decision he was about to make hit him full force. He couldn't keep running. It wasn't just about Claire anymore. It wasn't even about the twisted game Sam had played to lure him into this mess. It was about his family, his children. Were they safe? Were they even alive? And if they were, what kind of life would they have once the truth finally came out? Sam was standing by his car, looking up at the house with an unreadable expression. He didn't even flinch when Alex approached, his face a mask of calculated detachment. "I didn't want this for you, Alex." "I tried to stop it," Sam said quietly, almost as if apologizing. But his words only made Alex angrier. "Stop it? Stop what, Sam? You've been playing me the whole time. All those leads, all those fake clues. You never intended for me to find the truth, did you? You're all in on this together," Alex shouted, his fists clenched, the rage boiling inside him. "What did you want from me, Sam? Why drag me into this?" Sam's eyes hardened, but there was something else in them. A sadness, a resignation that made Alex pause. "Alex, this is bigger than you and me. You need to listen. The truth is, you've been a part of this for longer than you know. You've always been part of the plan." Alex felt his world tilt. His mind reeled.
What?
"What the hell are you talking about?" Sam stepped forward, his voice lowering. "You don't understand. But you will soon. I never wanted you to get this far. But now that you have to make a choice." A cold wave of dread washed over Alex. A choice? What kind of choice? Between your family's safety or the truth. If you keep digging, you're putting them all at risk. There's a lot more to this than you realize. Sam's eyes darkened, and he stepped even closer, as if to drive the weight of his words home. "There are people watching you, Alex. People who won't hesitate to do anything to keep the secret buried. And you're not the only one in danger. Not anymore." Alex stood frozen, his mind a blur of conflicting thoughts and emotions. What could Sam possibly mean? What choice was he being forced to make? And how far was Sam willing to go to ensure Alex stayed silent? "You're not giving me a choice, Sam. You're threatening me," Alex said, his voice trembling, though he was doing his best to keep his composure. "What happens if I refuse? What happens if I push forward and expose everything? What happens to my family then?" Sam's expression darkened, and for the first time, Alex saw the fear in his eyes, real, raw fear. You won't like the answer to that, Alex. Trust me. The truth was slipping away, and with each passing second, it felt like the entire world was closing in on him. Was he really willing to risk everything for the truth? Could he live with the consequences if he did? And if he stayed silent, if he let this twisted game continue, what would become of his family? Sam's voice was low but urgent now. You have to decide, Alex. And you don't have much time. If you don't act now, it'll be too late for all of us. Alex's stomach churned as the weight of his choices pressed down on him. How far was he willing to go? What would he sacrifice to uncover the truth? And who could he trust when everyone around him had their own agenda? The air felt thick, suffocating, as he stood there, unsure of what to do. The clock was ticking, and with each passing second, it felt like his grip on everything he once believed in was slipping further away.
You said.
Alex could barely breathe as the weight of Sam's words hung in the air, pressing down on him like a ton of bricks. The threat was no longer vague. It was real, and it was coming for him, for his family, for everything he thought he understood about the world around him. His mind scrambled, trying to make sense of it all, but every answer led to more questions. Who were these people, these shadowy figures Sam was talking about? And why was Sam, someone he had known for years, suddenly acting like a stranger, speaking in riddles and half-truths, with fear lurking in his eyes? It hit him all at once, a cold realization that made his skin crawl. This wasn't just about him. The conspiracy was bigger than he had ever imagined. This wasn't just some small-time operation with a few crooked individuals pulling the strings. No, it was a network, a vast, organized system, stretching far beyond anything he could fathom. And the deeper he went, the more it became clear. He had been nothing more than a pawn in a much larger game. You have to understand, Alex, Sam continued, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and desperation. This isn't just about your family. This isn't just about you or me. There are people who will stop at nothing to protect what's been buried for so long. And trust me, you don't want to know what they're capable of. The words hit Alex like a punch to the gut. His breath caught in his throat, his pulse racing as he processed what Sam was telling him. The truth was more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. There were others involved, others he hadn't even begun to consider. And someone close to him, someone he had trusted, was playing him like a fool. Before Alex could even respond, the phone in his pocket buzzed. He pulled it out, his heart sinking when he saw the name on the screen.
Claire.
The last person he expected to hear from, especially after everything that had happened. He didn't want to answer, didn't want to know what she had to say, but his finger moved instinctively, swiping the screen to answer the call. Alex, you need to listen to me. Claire's voice crackled through the phone, her words laced with urgency and fear. You're not going to believe this, but I've been working with Sam. This whole thing, it's bigger than we thought. I was trying to protect you, trying to keep you from getting caught up in it, but now it's too late. They know everything. They know you're onto them. Alex's stomach turned, a cold sweat breaking out across his forehead. He felt the ground shift beneath him, his entire world beginning to crumble. The person he had been fighting for, the person he had trusted, had been lying to him all along. The walls were closing in, and now Claire, his own wife, was revealing that she was just as much a part of this twisted game as everyone else. What do you mean, Claire? His voice shook, but he couldn't let her hear his fear. Not now, not when everything was unraveling so quickly. What's going on? Who are we dealing with here? Claire hesitated, the sound of her breath heavy on the other end of the line. You don't understand. Sam isn't the only one you need to worry about. There are people watching us, Alex. People with power, with connections that go deep into the government, into law enforcement. It's a network, a web of influence, and we're all caught in it. All of us. And I. Before she could finish, the line went dead. Alex's heart skipped a beat as he stared at the screen, his mind racing. Someone had cut her off. Someone didn't want him to hear the truth. Who the hell is this? Alex muttered under his breath, the urgency growing by the second. He shoved the phone back into his pocket, barely aware of Sam standing there, his eyes wide with concern. Or was it something else? A glint of fear? Or guilt? You need to make a decision, Alex, Sam said, his voice a low whisper, as if the walls had ears. There's no more time. If you don't act now, it's over. Your family, everything will be gone. They'll make sure of it. The gravity of Sam's words hit him like a freight train. What had Claire meant when she said they? Who were these people, and why were they willing to go so far to silence the truth? It felt like the walls were closing in on him from all sides. The betrayal, the lies, the constant shifting of allegiances, everything was falling apart, and Alex was right in the middle of it. But there was no going back now. The stakes had never been higher, and Alex knew, deep down, that the only way to get to the bottom of this, if there even was a bottom, was to keep pushing, to keep digging, no matter how dangerous it became. He turned to Sam, his eyes locked on him with a new intensity. What's the next step? What do I need to do? Sam swallowed hard, his face pale, but there was a sense of finality in his voice when he spoke. You need to go to the address I gave you. Tonight. Don't tell anyone. Trust no one. It's the only way. Alex's pulse quickened, his hands trembling with the weight of the decision before him. There was no time to think it through, no time to weigh the consequences. He had to move now before it was too late. The thought of going to that address terrified him. What if it was a trap? What if they were waiting for him, ready to silence him forever? But the fear of what would happen to his family if he didn't act was even greater. He couldn't let them win. He couldn't let them erase everything he loved. With one final glance at Sam, Alex turned and rushed to his car, his mind racing. This was it. The endgame was here. Whatever secrets were buried in that place, he would uncover them, no matter the cost. There was no turning back now. The conspiracy had gone global, and Alex was about to find out just how deep the rabbit hole really went. You said. The air in the warehouse was thick with tension as Alex's footsteps echoed in the cavernous, dimly lit space. His pulse was racing, the sound of his heart pounding in his ears, and yet, despite the urgency of the situation, everything around him seemed to move in slow motion. Each step felt heavier than the last as he neared the room where the answers, hopefully, lay. The address Sam had given him had led him here, deep into the heart of the conspiracy. He had no idea what he was walking into, but there was no turning back now. He could feel the weight of every decision he'd made, every lie he'd uncovered, pressing down on him like a 1,000-pound anchor. The deeper he dug, the more the truth seemed to slip further out of his grasp, as if the universe itself was conspiring against him to keep the answers hidden. But tonight, that would change. He was determined to end it whatever it took. For his family. For Claire. For the truth. The sound of distant footsteps interrupted his thoughts, pulling him back to reality. Alex's heart skipped a beat as he flattened himself against the wall, breath held, straining to hear. It wasn't just one set of footsteps. There were multiple. They were coming closer. Slowly, cautiously, like they knew he was here, like they were expecting him. In the dim light, shadows danced across the room, distorting the space into something more sinister, more dangerous. He had no idea how many people were out there, how many had been pulling the strings from behind the scenes. But he couldn't stop now. He couldn't turn back. A figure emerged from the shadows, and Alex's breath caught in his throat. It wasn't Sam. It wasn't Claire. It was someone he hadn't expected to see, someone who had been part of the story from the beginning, someone whose face he recognized all too well. Well, the voice came, cold and detached, almost amused. You've made it this far, Alex. I didn't think you'd actually get here. But I guess I underestimated you. It was Detective Harris, the same detective who had been assigned to the case when the first death had occurred. The man who had acted so helpful, so concerned, always there with the right answers, always willing to push Alex in the right direction. Harris had been the one to keep Alex on track, feeding him information, guiding him through the maze of deceit. But now, standing in front of him, it was clear. Harris was no friend. He was the enemy. Alex's voice was thick with disbelief, anger, and fear all at once. You've been playing me this whole time? Harris chuckled, his eyes glinting with something darker. You really think I was here to help? You think I've been on your side, Alex?
No.
I was keeping an eye on you, making sure you didn't uncover too much. You've been a good little pawn, but now. He stepped closer, his voice low and dangerous. Now, you've outlived your usefulness. The words hit Alex like a punch to the gut. Everything, every lead he had followed, every clue that had seemed to point him in the right direction, it had all been orchestrated. Harris had known all along. He had been guiding Alex, nudging him down the path that would eventually lead to this moment. The entire thing had been a setup, a carefully calculated move in a game he wasn't even aware he was playing. Why? Alex demanded, his voice shaking. Why do all of this? What's the endgame? Harris didn't answer immediately. Instead, he took a step back, as if savoring the moment. Then, with a cold, calculating smile, he answered, "You're not the only one with family to protect, Alex.
This isn't about you.
It's about power, control. It's about protecting what we've built, what's been built long before you and your little investigations ever came along. You've been a nuisance, but I'm afraid it's time to end this." Just as Alex's mind raced to process the implications of Harris's words, something caught his eye, something glinting in the corner of the room. A flash of metal. The sudden realization sent a chill through his body. A gun. Harris wasn't here to negotiate. He was here to finish what had been started. Before Alex could react, the sound of footsteps echoed again, this time from behind him. He whipped around, eyes wide, and froze. It was Claire, but she wasn't alone. Standing beside her, looking eerily calm, was Sam. "Alex, don't," Claire whispered, her voice trembling. "It's too late. Please. We can't win this fight." Alex's heart shattered as he realized what he was seeing. Claire, his wife, the person he had trusted above all else, was standing with the very people who had been pulling the strings, the ones who had Ted everything from the start. Sam, too. He wasn't just some reluctant accomplice. He had been a part of it all. "You knew," Alex said, his voice breaking with a mix of disbelief and pain. "You knew everything. You were part of this. From the beginning." Claire's eyes welled up with tears, but she didn't try to deny it. "I didn't want this. I never wanted you to get hurt, Alex. But I couldn't stop it. I couldn't stop them." A shift in the air. A noise. A sound from above. A creak of the floorboards. And then, as if from nowhere, the lights flickered and went out completely. The room was plunged into darkness. Alex's heart stopped. Everything went silent. Not a breath, not a movement. Then a single, sharp click echoed through the room. A gunshot. And suddenly, everything Alex had believed about the conspiracy, about his life, and about the people closest to him was thrown into chaos. "You said." The room was silent for what felt like an eternity after the gunshot echoed through the dark, heavy air. Alex stood frozen, his heart hammering in his chest, the weight of betrayal and uncertainty crushing down on him. It was impossible to tell what had just happened, who had fired the shot, or even if anyone had been hit. His senses were overloaded, the confusion and fear blurring everything into a fog. But one thing was undeniable. This was the moment everything had been leading to. The moment when the truth was no longer a distant hope but a brutal, raw reality. When the lights flickered back on, the scene before Alex was chaos incarnate. Claire was on the ground, a look of shock on her face, blood seeping from her chest where she had been struck. Sam was nowhere to be seen. The room seemed to have collapsed into a surreal, nightmarish vision. And then, standing above Claire's body, was Harris, his gun still smoking, his expression unreadable. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Harris stared down at Claire, his eyes flickering with some emotion Alex couldn't quite place. It was almost as if he hadn't expected this to end this way. Almost as if this was never part of the plan. But then, he met Alex's gaze, his face hardening, the mask of control slipping back into place. "I warned you," Harris said, his voice a low growl. "This is how it always ends, Alex. You can never trust anyone, not even the ones closest to you." Alex's heart twisted with the knowledge that everything he had fought for, everything he had believed, had been a lie. The web of lies spun by the people he loved most had brought him to this point, and now there was no going back. His world was shattered beyond recognition, and the one person who had once meant everything to him lay dying before his eyes. For a fleeting moment, Alex considered confronting Harris, confronting the man who had manipulated him from the very beginning, but there was no time. As he glanced around, he saw that the walls were closing in. Harris had more allies than Alex had realized, and there was no telling how much more of the conspiracy remained hidden in the shadows. Harris was right. He had been nothing more than a pawn in a game too dangerous to win. But then, in a surprising turn, a new figure stepped into the room, a figure Alex hadn't expected, someone who had been lurking in the background all along. Sam reappeared, bloodied but alive. It was then that Alex understood. The pieces finally fell into place. "Samu?" Alex said, his voice hoarse with disbelief. "You're working with him? After everything?" Sam didn't answer right away. He stepped forward, his face bruised but resolute. "I had no choice, Alex. You were digging too deep. They were going to kill us both if we didn't play along. I tried to warn you." A new, bitter understanding settled in Alex's gut. Sam hadn't been the villain. He'd been just as trapped as Alex, caught in the web of lies and manipulation that had woven itself around them all. But the truth was still painful to accept. Sam had betrayed him, just like Claire, just like everyone else. Harris, sensing the tension, stepped closer to Alex, his smirk returning. "It's over. This was always the plan. We've been preparing for this moment for years, Alex. You can't stop us. No one can." But something in Alex had shifted. He wasn't the same person who had walked into this nightmare months ago. He wasn't just a man fighting for the truth anymore. He was someone who had seen the depths of human darkness, someone who had survived it. He wasn't going to let it end like this. Not like this. "You think this is over?" Alex's voice was low, filled with a quiet determination. "You're wrong. There's more to this. You don't know how deep I've already dug." Harris took a step back, a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. But before he could react, Alex reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the one thing that had been the key all along, the file. The missing evidence that had eluded them both, the last piece of the puzzle that would bring down the entire operation. The one thing Harris never expected Alex to find. "Do you really think I didn't know everything? Do you think I would just walk away?" Alex's voice held a steady edge. "This isn't over. You're done." The look in Harris's eyes shifted, the moment of triumph slipping into something else, something darker, more dangerous. He lunged toward Alex, but it was too late. The sound of sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder, echoing through the empty warehouse. The authorities were closing in. It was over. As Harris was taken into custody and the police swarmed the warehouse, Alex stood alone in the center of the chaos, his heart heavy with the weight of all that had transpired.
Claire was gone.
The life he once knew was irreparably broken. But there was no time to mourn. Not yet. The truth had come out, but it had come at an unimaginable cost. The story of betrayal and murder wasn't over. Not completely. There were still threads to untangle, still secrets lurking beneath the surface. As Alex walked out into the cold night, he didn't feel like a hero. He didn't feel like a victim either. He felt like someone who had survived, someone who had learned the most painful lessons of trust, deception, and survival. As the screen began to fade to black, one lingering thought clung to him, the realization that the deeper you dig, the more you uncover. And sometimes, what you find is more than you're ready to handle. And just before the video ended, a final, unsettling image flashed across the screen, a text message on Alex's phone, a single line that sent a chill down his spine. "It's not over.